Hi, I'm Professor Andrew McLeod, and welcome to this, the 11th in our series of coronavirus podcasts for the Global Thinkers Forum. I took a break last week to see how things are starting to unfold, as there is a sense of optimism developing in the rich countries, thinking that the virus is perhaps being beaten as the curves turn down. And people have started to relax, go out into the streets, cafes and restaurants. And we've also seen the protests following George Floyd's killing at the hands of the police, and the secondary protests that have come around racism, colonialism, and forcing the West to face up to some of the brutal truths of its past. Unfortunately, many of these protests will become super spreading events for the virus. But if we take the statement Black Lives Matter, which of course I agree with, we've also got to recognise that Black Lives Matter everywhere, globally. And the one thing that is true is the economic consequences of this virus are going to disproportionately hit Black lives in the developing world. Early studies are now starting to estimate somewhere between 100 and 400 million people are going to be thrown back into poverty because of the economic slowdowns caused by the virus. The vast majority of those in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia and South America. We've already seen increases in measles because of the decrease of measles vaccination programs. Measles kills far more people in the developing world than the virus has. We are starting to see the risks to the polio eradication program, particularly in northern Nigeria, in northern Cameroon, and in parts of Pakistan, as social distancing has required those vaccination programs to be scaled back. So how are we going to handle this? And why is there this bubble of optimism? I like optimism. I normally am an optimist. But I've been saying for the last 3 weeks that the highest day of new recorded cases in the coronavirus is yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Because basically each day brings a new record high. The virus is not in the retreat globally, as it's in the retreat in the developed world, in wealthy countries, is not in the retreat in the developing world. We need to understand that the virus is continuing to expand and therefore is likely to come back to the developed world unless a vaccine is created. But as we know, of the 4 coronaviruses that are floating around the human population today, we have a vaccine for precisely 0 of them. So, how do we steer through this? Yes, it's important that we protest, but we need to recognise that the right to free expression comes with a corresponding obligation to express ourselves in a way that doesn't inadvertently cause more or greater harm to the communities we're hoping our protests will support. The virus disproportionately impacts on poorer communities in wealthy countries, and certainly is going to impact economically disproportionately on the poorer communities around the globe. Are we going to allow these protests to be super spreading events? Or are there ways we can achieve both our protest objectives and our public health objectives? That is the challenge I would throw to people organising these protests. But I would also say to people that are now busy starting to unlock their cafes and their restaurants, don't please think that we've got this virus beaten. We haven't. And as we start to wish to unlock global trade, it will come back. And if you think that once the virus has gone into the developing world, it's no longer a problem for the developed world, remember this. The virus started with one person in Wuhan and has gone all around the world. A second wave could start from a person in Yemen, or a person in Cameroon, or a person in Brazil. I really wish I could finish this recording from an optimistic viewpoint, saying yes, we are now coming out of this. But I actually think we're in a bubble of optimism waiting for a second wave to come crashing back down upon us. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have crowd immunity. What we do have is lockdowns and restrictions to our social behaviours, which have to become our norm, at least in the foreseeable short to medium future, which will challenge us to ask ourselves questions like, what's more important, our freedom of expression or our responsibility to public health to others? No matter how valid our protest desire is, Is it really the best thing to do for the people for whom we are trying to improve their lot in life? There are challenges. Black lives matter? Yes. All lives matter? Yes. Protest is a right? Yes. An obligation to look after others is a burden we should all have. And these issues are all coming into conflict, and we need to make our own ethical decisions about the right thing to do. That's where I'll leave this podcast. Remember, it's up to each of us to decide ethically what is the right thing for us to do. I am Andrew McLeod. This has been the 11th in a series of podcasts for the Global Thinkers Forum.